Hello and welcome back to episode 2 of the Truehope Family Files. This is part 2 of an 8-part special series here on Truehope Cast, the official podcast of Truehope Canada. If you didn't have the chance to listen or watch part 1, I highly recommend you do so before going forward. Episode 1 was titled Tragedy Strikes, and that really does set up the story going forward. Today's episode is part 2 and is titled The Heavy Hand of Health Canada. Once again, we are joined by VP of Truehope Canada, Mr. David Stephan. So sit back, relax and enjoy episode 2 of the Truehope Family Files. Enjoy the show.
Supplement developed in Alberta, Empower Plus, has been helping Canadians with a mental illness known as bipolar disease, manic depressive. Tremendous cost to the individuals, a high risk of suicide.
It felt like I was somewhere standing watching myself while I was here just bursting and like a volcano, all mad.
This has brought me to recognize a new me, and has allowed me to become, a new person.
Province of Alberta, when they heard about the effect that Empower Plus was having on Albertans, they said, why don't we look into this? There's huge costs associated with it. And Mr. Speaker, they set up a $544,000 study.
The decrease in their symptoms is of a magnitude that is very impressive. Any medication that ever had this effect would catch a lot of people's attention.
Health Canada hears about this and moves in to shut down the study.
Shame.
Mr. Speaker, is there no room for science to progress the treatment of disease?
I know that for a decade before this supplement, I made over a dozen suicide attempts, and I really am lucky to be standing before you today.
They sent the police in to raid this little company in Raymond, Alberta, and raid their computers, and has done everything to obstruct delivery of a product.
I put in a phone call to Health Canada, where I was immediately flipped over to a mental health crisis line, where they have a script that says that you are mentally ill, you need to be under the care of your physician. Please go to the hospital. If you run out of your supplement, you will not have this dangerous drug anymore. We're looking out for your best interest.
An informed consumer is a far better judge of their healthcare needs than any Health Canada bureaucrat in Ottawa.
I just ask that you please let me keep my quality of life. Let me continue as a productive member of society.
Now there's over 3,000 Canadians receiving help from this product, and yet Health Canada would move to take it off the market, Mr. Speaker.
I love this country and I'm proud of my government, but right now I'm really scared at what they're doing.
Is there no room for science to progress the treatment of disease?
Hello everybody and welcome to part 2 of the Truehope Family Files. This is the second edition to an 8-part special series here on Truehope Cast, and part 2 is titled The Heavy Hand of Health Canada, and it follows up part 1, which was titled Tragedy Strikes. We are blessed to have again in the studio with us Mr. David Stephan, VP of Truehope Canada. He's going to be taking us through the next phase of the Truehope Family Files. David, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing really well. Thank you, Simon. Appreciate you having me on the virtual studio here, and I am anxious to share more of the very dramatic and even traumatic story that's behind the beginnings of Truehope, and how we get to the point today that we've got products on the store shelves.
Absolutely, and this is just going to be another wonderful section to this series that's going to build upon each other really beautifully. And in the last episode, we ended part 1 with a raid on Truehope headquarters where guns were drawn. This incident occurred in June 2003 and could be considered a touch heavy-handed by Health Canada with the with agents there and accompanying our CMP, but we'll certainly get into that. But before we jump into part 2, can you please maybe give us a quick recap on part 1 as a refresher to integrate us into part 2?
Yeah, perfect. For anybody who hasn't seen part 1, definitely recommend going and watching it. It really lays the foundation for the beginnings of Truehope, and gives you an idea of kind of where our hearts are and why we do what we do. And so what we discuss within that is the fact that my grandfather committed suicide in the late 70s. And then my mother followed in his footsteps 15 years later. And in January of 1994, she took her own life as well, leaving behind 9 children who all had various mental health conditions. As these mental health conditions are oftentimes hereditary, our family was definitely fell within that realm where we were all struggling, not just because of the traumatic situations, but even before my mother took her life, we were all exhibiting signs of different mental health conditions. And so really what we see is a miraculous discovery coming from a source that's so incredibly unlikely, through my father, who by trade is an engineer. And this knowledge comes forward, this understanding of nutrition comes to the forefront, and some phenomenal discoveries are made in how to get nutrition into the body in such a way that it'll actually create the results that we're looking for, the results that proper nutrition should have in helping to correct mental health conditions, but also helping our health overall to flourish. And then after the first study that goes on to national news because it shows that the Empower Plus is over 3 times more effective than your standard antidepressants, literally the next day, Health Canada graces us with their presence and becomes an integral part of the Truehope story for another decade thereafter. And so if you've missed part 1, definitely go back. It's what leads up to the gun drawn raid on our Truehope head office, which was, you say a touch heavy-handed. I appreciate you minimizing that. Anybody who was there, by the time the police went to leave, 2 days later, they realized that it was beyond a touch heavy-handed, and they had some the sergeant that oversaw the investigation and the execution of the search warrant had some beautiful words to say to my father in encouraging him to go after Health Canada, knowing exactly that the RCMP had been used and abused in this entire process. So yeah, that's a recap of last week.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's some really fascinating points within part 1, which you absolutely have to go and check out to segue into part 2. But yeah, let's jump straight in. So gun drawn raid on Truehope headquarters. Can you just paint the picture for us? Because when we hear gun drawn raid, we hear SWAT team. I see guns in my head. I feel like it's like a cartel movie. So why don't you paint the picture for us in regards to the environment, who's involved, who's there, and what happens on this day?
Well, here's the sad thing about it is that was one of the only days that I had taken off. At that point in time, I'd been working for my father for about 2 months at that point in time, doing video work and compiling news clips and all that. But that particular day, I'd actually taken off for my birthday, and I was actually out of town, about an hour and a half away. So unfortunately, I wasn't there to physically observe it. I was able to take the video that there was video footage that was taken of it, deeper into the investigation, basically grilling these Health Canada agents as they're sitting there in our building. So I was able to take that and compile that and got to see that, but I wasn't actually there personally to witness it. But here's the understanding that was given to me from numerous sources, numerous witnesses, is that, sunny, beautiful June morning, and all of a sudden the doors come opening up, the front doors. Now, to paint the environment, this is a building. It's an old TransAlta building that had been decommissioned by TransAlta when they centralized. And so we had purchased this building to set up a support center, as well as a research facility. And so the whole front of the building is literally a call center where you have all these middle-aged women, most of them middle-aged, not all, I shouldn't be saying that. It varied from, I guess there's a few women in their early 20s, but most of them were, anywhere between 35 to 55 years old for the most part, that are on the phones, and they're helping to support clients from around the world. And so it's literally just what you'd expect to see in a call center. And so there's nothing that's threatening about this environment. And all of a sudden the doors come busting open, and you've got the RCMP SWAT team rushing in and demanding everybody gets away from the computers and just, rounding them up and putting them into the lunchroom. So they're all detained in the lunchroom at this point in time. And once the RCMP realized that there's no threat at all, because they basically were approaching it as if it was a drug bust. And that's how it had been chalked up. to be by Health Canada, that there's an illegal drug operation taking place out of this building in the industrial park in, small town Raymond, Alberta, 3,500 people. The industrial park consisted of literally, I think, 3 buildings, maybe 4, right? Like there's nothing to it. And so we're one of those buildings, the old power building, and all of a sudden the RCMP are just coming in, basically guns blazing type of thing, right? And once they realized there was no threat, all of a sudden things toned down. But it was very threatening to these ladies. I mean, that was the last thing that I'm sure they thought they were going to encounter when they're, driving to work that morning. They show up, it's nice, it's sunny, it's a beautiful day. They're getting on the phone, they're helping people come off medications and helping them get their lives back. And all of a sudden, boom, there's police in front of you with guns. So what's interesting about this, though, is there was a search warrant that had been issued, court-ordered, that Health Canada had obtained in the absence of our knowledge. But here's the interesting thing about that search warrant is that it was illegal. They should have never been able to obtain it because they were supposed to disclose all the information to the judge who was granting that search warrant, who was basically ratifying it. What Health Canada had omitted to tell that judge is the fact that due to what we'd ended off on last week, Health Canada seizing the product, the Empire Plus, at the US border as it was coming across and preventing over 3,000 Canadians from having access to it at that point in time, that we had already launched a lawsuit against Health Canada. So we were in the courts with Health Canada. It was already all before the courts, and we were ready to sue them for the fact that they were endangering people's lives through their actions, and that they knew that they were endangering people's lives, and that they were really moving forward with wanton disregard for human life. And so we were suing them on behalf of the people, right? On behalf of the right to life, really, in Canada. And so they never disclosed that to the judge, which changes everything. Mm-hmm. So really what they were doing is they were using the court system, they were abusing the court system to basically push through an agenda here to try to scare us away, because we were helping to incite protests all across Canada in relation to what Health Canada was doing. And this came on the heels, this illegal search on our building came on the heels of us protesting in front of the Federal Minister of Health's constituent office in Edmonton, Alberta, the week previous. So, we really got to see what it was that Health Canada was up to at this point in time. And we were disturbed, but we weren't scared, and we were willing to do whatever it took to make sure that Canadians had continued access to these supplements.
So do you think this whole situation where Health Canada comes in with, I think, nine agents, they come in with the SWAT team, they come bursting through the door and frightening a lot of individuals, you think this was purely a scare tactic rather than looking for evidence? Because I'm sure, like the SWAT, the members of the police who come in there, they've been briefed that this is a drug investigation. They need to go in there with force, deadly force if necessary. I guess why would you have a gun if that wasn't a possibility? And they're obviously been told that this is what's happening behind the closed doors of this building. And at the end of the day, like, Health Canada coming in there to ruffle feathers and scare Truehope Canada. Like, what do you believe the goal would have been? And so much manipulation in regards to the courts, and the police. Like, that's just madness.
Yeah. So I definitely say a scare tactic, but also retaliation tactic as well. It definitely fits the bill, and everything that was listed on the search warrant, Health Canada knew. They'd been, we've been battling back and forth with Health Canada at this point in time for nearly 3 years. And so they had a pretty good understanding of how our business was operating. Mm-hmm. And so everything that they had listed on the search warrant and brought before the judge to legally ratify it, because they didn't disclose other pertinent information, not a single thing was found on that search warrant. The whole thing was baseless. Literally 2 days later, we're up and running, and the sergeant that was overseeing the whole raid, pulls my dad off to the side on his way out the door and says, "Go get him." Like, that's pretty telling. that's pretty telling when the RCMP realizes that, and they're not on side with Health Canada after they saw how they had just literally been used and abused. Like, what a waste of time, what a waste of taxpayers' money to try to remove a scientifically validated discovery that was far cheaper than psychiatric medications and far more effective than psychiatric medications, and would help people live much more beautiful lives, returning back to the way that they should be, being able to pursue their dreams. The whole thing is extremely egregious when you take a look at it. But yeah, scare tactic, retaliation tactic, trying to get us to go away. Well, 2 days later, we're up and running as if nothing had happened. And we're now trying to navigate forward as we are literally counseling thousands of Canadians at this point in time who are terrified and are needing the supplements.
Absolutely. And it really shows, it's really kind of the first, showing of the hand through Health Canada. This is the type of thing that they are willing to do. They're willing to, that can't be a cheap project, or it can't be a cheap mission to send those individuals in there. And you say the sergeant of the police there speaking with your father saying, go get them, because their time has clearly been wasted. They've had to scare and threaten innocent Canadians. Like the police do such an amazing job, and they don't want to go into those situations unless they truly have to do that. And yeah, it really goes to show that Health Canada really, in that situation, they are willing to waste time, waste money, scare and threaten to get what they want. And if they're on the understanding or opinion that this product is a drug, I guess they could have very easily said to the police involved that this involves a drug which has not had permission, doesn't have a DIN. This is an illegal use. I could just imagine the conversation between Health Canada agents and the police, just very carefully using specific words like illegal and drug, and obviously leaving out massive context, and sending those poor individuals, those poor police officers, into a situation where they must have just been like, within 4 or 5 seconds, they must have just been like, what are we doing here?
I would sure hope so. Maybe for some of them it would take them, maybe 10 or 15 seconds, but either way, they would have realized that there was no threat, that the picture that had been painted for them was completely misleading and distorted. The whole of it, it's actually, if it wasn't so serious, it'd be incredibly laughable, really. Yeah. Like, it's just, it's crazy. It's literally crazy. And the fact that, by the time that everything's said and done, we're looking at millions of dollars of taxpayers' money being utilized to try to remove something that the taxpayers should have access to, that it's in their best interest to have access to. Like, it's just, it's shocking.
We could talk for days and days and days about the use of allocations of taxpayers' money by the government and how irresponsible they are with that. It blows my mind that the amount of money they receive from citizens of this country and how poorly they utilize that money. And that's a whole nother conversation. But you said that 2 days after this incident, Truehope's kind of like back in business. But what's the state in regards to the access of this product to the thousands of Canadians that rely on it?
All right. So this is June 2003, right? There's still no access. Health Canada is still not permitting it to cross the border, and they're seizing the product. So here, people have paid for this product, and Health Canada has seized it, preventing them from gaining access to that which they've lawfully paid for and have a legal right to, under the PUD, under the Personal Use or PUD, Personal Use Importation Directorate. They have access to 3 months of a supplement, as long as there's nothing that's contraband. Like, they have access to order that in from wherever they want in the world, and it can cross the border as long as it's only a 3-month supply, and that's in the regulations, right? And so now Health Canada is depriving them of that. So what happens is these smuggling rings start up. Otherwise, law-abiding citizens, we're not talking about rebels. We're talking about like grandmas. I'm not kidding you. We're hearing these stories. We're hearing about grandmas driving from Red Deer to go all the way down across the border, which is about from Red Deer. It's about 4.5 hours, 5 hours, driving all the way across the U.S. border, smuggling the supplements back, the Empower Plus back up into Canada for their grandchildren. We hear those types of stories. We hear of natives being employed out of Ontario, Quebec area to bring it across the border there in much larger quantities.
Right.
And this is a citizen, like a natural grassroots movement that's taking place. And we're just hearing the stories about how people are gaining access to these supplements that Health Canada is depriving the common man from having access to. And so this just goes to show how desperate Canadians were. Now, Health Canada at this point in time is, basically getting themselves beat up in the media. They are getting themselves beat up by other members, industry leaders, if you will. If industry leader is the wrong terminology, but people that have a vested interest in mental health. For example, Ron Lejeunesse, the head of the Alberta chapter of the Canadian Mental Health Association. He starts warning Health Canada about their actions, saying, look, I'm working with mentally ill people all the time, and a number of them are taking the Empower Plus, getting well, and you're going to cause suicides by what you're doing. That's what I'm hearing. Like these people are regressing. They are, they're becoming symptomatic again. They don't want to go back on the medications that never worked in the first place. So this is the dialogue that's taking place. And so Health Canada is apprised to exactly the results of what their actions have been. Now, if Health Canada was truly interested in the health of Canadians, they would have taken a look at that and said, whoa, we're putting people in harm's way. Our actions could actually kill people. That's what's in the balances here. And you think that they'd have a shift in their perspective and a shift in how they're operating, and that they would lift the ban. Do they? No. Do suicides result? Yes. And we'll get into detail, I guess, a little bit more about that in a moment. The fact of the matter is that Health Canada literally killed Canadians through their completely unnecessary actions that would only serve to protect the bottom line interests of the profits of the pharmaceutical industry. That's it.
Yeah. And it's very important to recognize that, whether you've researched the NHPPA and their work, but Health Canada and how they're constructed, how they're funded, they consider pharmaceutical companies as clients of theirs. You would expect them, and I think a lot of people expect that that Health Canada's clients would be the people of Canada, and they would be there to serve and protect and look at the best options, to take harmful products off the shelves, to put research into up and coming products that could help benefit the Canadian people. I think when I first moved to Canada 8 years ago, I assumed that, the government entity in charge of health, that would be their primary role. But no, you don't have to dig very deep to recognize that. I think it's 2/3 of Health Canada's funding comes from pharmaceutical companies, and that's quite clearly where your money's coming from, where your bills are getting paid. You're going to have to serve that master. And without question, when a product comes along that's actually showing incredibly promising research, back in 2000 at the University of Calgary, Dr. Bonnie Kaplan, incredible research sharing preliminary results. I think it was shown to be 3 times more effective in antidepressants. That information goes on the news and then the next day, Health Canada shuts this research down. I mean, what other motive could you have other than to protect your master in that situation?
Exactly. So the Alberta government is looking at this and saying, we're going to fund over $500,000 into further studies to benefit the people, while Health Canada is coming in saying, we're going to suppress this evidence and make sure that no more scientific research takes place on this supplement. And then they start to add, erroneous words in there like dangerous supplement or dangerous drug, right? They start to mischaracterize it to try to sway the general public to be behind them. Mm-hmm. The whole thing absolutely is abundantly clear that they were not looking out for the interests of Canadians, because if they were really looking out for the health of Canadians, they would have said, whoa, there's a new study that just emerged on a multivitamin mineral supplement that shows that it works for mental health conditions more, like better than psychiatric medications. Let's look into this. We can save a lot of money in the healthcare system. And not only are we not going to be just like numbing people and making them medicated, and feel like zombies, but we're going to be returning them back to being contributing members of society. So, economically, our economy is going to thrive because we have a healthier population that's more productive, and it's not draining our socialized medical system. Let's look at it logically. No, they had no interest in saving money in the medical system by offering something far cheaper, and they had no interest in empowering people to live their best lives by giving them something that wouldn't weigh them down, that wouldn't provide that brain fog that just keeps them kind of clouded, right? So the whole thing is so backwards, which means you got to follow the money. Follow the money and you'll see why the motives are there, because it makes no sense whatsoever as to why they did what they did, especially knowing the results of what would occur if they did what they did, because they knew it well in advance and their internal paperwork said so. So, at this time, there's still a ban on the Empire Plus. It wouldn't be till about October of 2003 that it became so heated that Health Canada finally lifted that ban. They finally had to relinquish because of the incredible amount of pressure that was on them. But then it gets interesting. In January of 2004, the regulations changed, which mean that we weren't out of order whatsoever in helping people with bipolar disorder or anything like that, because they said you have to have a drug identification number to help somebody with bipolar disorder. It's now classified as a drug. Well, now the regulations change and the NHP regs come in, the natural health product regulations come into play, which now precludes us from that whole DIN issue, drug identification number issue. And so now those come into play, but then Health Canada still persists and they charge us basically a backdated charge to pre-January 2004. And they now charge us for operating without having a drug identification number. And so they're relentless in trying to get rid of us, in basically trying to bankrupt us. Yeah. So at this point in time, we're preparing for court. And we end up with one lawyer, good lawyer, but she ends up becoming a judge. So we lose her as a lawyer, and eventually she goes on to become a Supreme Court judge. And so at that point in time, we're looking for a new lawyer, and we end up meeting this lovely gentleman by the name of Sean Buckley. And he had already been involved in helping a couple other natural health companies in relation to their battles with Health Canada, because we weren't the only ones being singled out. What we end up learning through all this is that if Health Canada is attacking a natural health company, you need to look into it, because if the products that they're attacking aren't killing people, they're probably incredibly good for you. There's really two ends of the spectrum. Anything in between, if it's not killing somebody, they're not going to come after you. But if it's not helping anybody, they're not going to come after you. So there's the two sides of the pendulum swing. Either it's really dangerous and it's killing people, so Health Canada actually does swoop in, and that's the fact of the matter. Not only is I'd say it's incredibly rare, it hasn't happened yet in history, right? There has been no deaths. Has there been some products that have been laced with some stuff, contaminated, something like that? Yeah, there has. That have created harm. Yeah, okay, Health Canada comes in, and they love to use that to springboard off and say we need more regulations. But on the other side, the majority of Health Canada's actions against the natural health community at that point in time were on therapeutic natural health products that were competing with the pharmaceutical industry. So all of the other companies that were being attacked, what we see is a common theme here. They were helping people come off medications and save their lives. So one of those examples, and you'll hear Sean Buckley talk about this today, is Strauss Heart Drops. Fantastic product coming from Strauss Herb Co. Helping people to not die from cardiovascular related diseases, right? Like, it's a really great product and it's proven. And so Health Canada is attacking them. So Sean Buckley is representing these other companies. So he comes on board and he starts to represent us. And this would become a very long relationship that still exists today, which we'll get to in episode 8. But that's when Sean Buckley comes on board. Now, here's what gets interesting about all this is Health Canada has a common tactic. They'll charge a company, they'll get the company to basically rack up all of this money in fees for their lawyers' fees and all that, and then they'll drop the charges right before it goes to litigation. And it's devastating for these natural health companies, because one, they didn't get to prove themselves that they weren't guilty, but two, they've just racked up a massive bill, and there's not a whole lot of money to be made in the natural health market for the most part, unless you really know what you're doing.
Yeah.
But nobody's gotten rich over here, even though we've been selling into over 105 countries throughout the world and whatnot, and had the Discovery Health documentary come out on us that was pushed into 50 different countries, translated into different languages. We still didn't get rich. Were we doing fairly well? Yeah, fairly well, so that we can continue to move this mission forward. But had we not had access to those extra funds, we would have been bankrupted through Health Canada's actions. And so Health Canada has this tactic where they'll do that. And we heard word that they were going to drop the charges. And so my father said, no, we're going to court. And so I remember, here I'm a young man. I'm in my early 20s at this point in time. I've got 3 other brothers that are working for the company at this point in time. And I remember my father getting all of us to go into this boardroom, and we gather around the phone, and he's like, hey, I think my oldest brother was one supplying him with these phone numbers, doing a lot of the digging. And my dad starts phoning the independent agents, the Health Canada agents who are responsible for, creating all this catastrophe within Canada. And so he starts phoning them and saying, hey, I just heard word that, you guys are going to drop the charges. I'm just so excited about this because, now I'm going to sue you personally for what you have done, for the harm that you have done to Canadians. So thank you guys very much, right, for expediting the process, because we wouldn't be able to sue them until, the initial litigation was over. So with them dropping the charges, it puts them in a position where now we can go at them individually much sooner. So my father is doing this. He's phoning all these agents, and we're all sitting around, and after the calls are done, we're just busting a gut laughing, because these agents are just like trepidation. Who goes at them personally, right? They feel that they're protected under this umbrella of Health Canada, that as bureaucracy, they're untouchable. And now here you got this individual, this rogue individual who took on Revenue Canada, the previous 6 years, and now he's coming at them individually. And so guess what they did? They didn't drop the charges. So now we're in the courts, and that was exactly what my father was hoping for and was able to achieve. Now he did this. I'll mind you, he's working with David Hardy at the time, and David Hardy has no idea that this is going on, because David Hardy and my dad didn't quite see eye to eye that way. My dad's a warrior. David Hardy is very, politically correct and all this, and they really balanced each other out. It was actually a great relationship, a business relationship for many, many years. But my dad did this unbeknownst to David Hardy, because David would not have approved whatsoever of that, and it would have created grounds for basically divorce within the business. In a sense, the split of the business would have taken place much earlier. And so we go to court, and things start to get a little interesting at that point in time. A lot of evidence coming out. This is where it becomes known that, Ron Lejeunesse gets on stand and under oath testifies to the fact that Health Canada had caused suicides, and that he was personally aware of 2 of them, personally aware of 2 suicides. We have no idea how many people suicide in Canada. We lost track of 300 of our clientele that we had in our database and never heard from them again during this time. So 10% of our clientele out of 3,000 Canadians, 300 of them disappeared. We never heard from them again. And so we have no idea how many of them committed suicide, based on the fact that Health Canada was preventing access to these supplements, to these vitamins and minerals, right? And so the Health Canada agents get up on stand, and Sean Buckley had some incredible fun with them in a sense, I guess, if you want to call it that, where things were coming out of these agents' mouths that even shocked Sean. He was expecting one answer, and they would give him the very answer you would never think would have rolled out of their lips or rolled off their tongues. It was crazy, like what came out. And so, perhaps we should probably pull up the Health Canada Exposed site to show some of the, I've got it here. I don't know if I can share it.
I can do that. That's ready to go here.
Okay.
Yeah, so for those people who are just listening, this is healthcanadaexposed.com that we're looking at right now.
So when you go down to the bottom there of the front page, you're going to see some of the most damning evidence that came out. You'll see portions of transcripts there from these Health Canada agents when they're being cross-examined by Sean Buckley, and the evidence that they supply is actually really quite shocking. And so I want to hone in, for the sake of time here, we'll just keep it short. But we have two main statements there. I'm going to just quote the last one there, where Health Canada agent Miles Brosu was asked, so if you were sent a document showing that people were dying because of what Health Canada was doing, you would just ignore that because it's not a policy or directive? Now, you would expect out of this that his answer would be an emphatic no, I'd stop that, because if I know that I'm killing people, I'm going to stop that. I remember, sitting through this 3-week trial, and I remember this was the most, indelibly imprinted on everybody's mind who was there, I'm sure, because everybody's mouths dropped open, their jaws hitting the floor on this one, when he answered yes, as in he would continue to do what he's doing, even though he knows it's killing Canadians, right? It was absolutely shocking. And the whole gallery, you can hear this gasp throughout the gallery that he would have heard being up on the stand there. And yet he doesn't retract his statement. He doesn't say, oh, actually, right? Nothing. He doesn't rebut and say, well, maybe I would have. No, nothing. It was a simple, yes, I would continue doing it, even because it's policy, even though it's killing Canadians. That just goes to show the mindset of Health Canada agents, that they're clearly not being trained to have the health of Canadians in mind. So
yeah,
really telling.
Yeah, it's quite remarkable. I mean, I'm sure a lot of our listeners are aware of Sean Buckley and his incredible work with the NHPPA. And whenever he's talking about the access or the future access that Canadians will have to natural health products, he refers to this case and Health Canada agents very, very frequently in regards to the fact that they absolutely they knew that they were going to put lives at risk. They knew that people were going to die by taking Empower Plus away from people. And Ron LaJeunesse, he did several press conferences after each suicidal death because of this ban. And it's absolutely another example of how Health Canada is clearly not serving Canadians. And I gasp every time I really hear that quote and put myself in that courtroom and hear what actually comes out of that government agent's mouth.
Yeah, it absolutely shocking because we thought they would have been putting on a facade of sorts, pretending that they were looking out for the health of Canadians. And the two Health Canada agents that took the stand did not communicate that was the case whatsoever. Like, they weren't even good liars. Like they were just straight up like arrogantly, nope, this is policy, it's directive, this is what we say, it goes. The mindset of a tyrant really is what it was, with no care for human life whatsoever.
Well, we've seen examples of this throughout history. That we saw Nuremberg trials in the early 50s in regards to World War II, and a lot of these people were saying they were just following orders and doing what they were told, and unfortunately, that is not a defense. And we see very similar words coming out of the mouths of these Health Canada agents in regards to just doing my job. I know it's going to put people at risk, but who am I to do anything or say anything?
Exactly. Yeah, it's a sad mindset, but unfortunately, it definitely has plagued humanity throughout history, and I don't think it's going away anytime soon. So we're in the courts for 3 weeks now. What's really interesting about this is that there's withheld evidence that Health Canada refuses to bring forward, and then the judge finally orders it, says if it doesn't come forward, the whole case will just be shut down. And they're saying it's undiscoverable, can't find it. Literally, within a couple hours, they've got bankered boxes of these files coming into the courtroom. It's like, oh, interesting. I thought that was undiscoverable, like, for months, and all of a sudden now it's discoverable within the hour that you're told that the whole case will be shut down if you don't bring all of these files in to show how egregious your actions were against Canadians. It was all of the notes that had been taken from the 1-800 crisis line that they had set up when they created this crisis. So what else is interesting is that there is researchers that take the stand that start to talk about, like, Bonnie Kaplan, who conducted the first research as seen in the episode 1, that went on to national news. But then there's also Dr. Charles Popper, a world-renowned psychopharmacologist and psychiatrist out of Harvard, who also came on board and began studying it. And he was extremely skeptical. And so he tells his whole story on stand saying, look, I've got no biases here. I thought the stuff was complete hogwash, right? But then I tried it once on one situation where this individual, a colleague of mine, didn't want his 10-year-old son on pharmaceuticals. And so we tried it out, and it worked. And that got me thinking, and then trying it more and trying to replicate it. It didn't work. So I had to go back to the original formula that Truehope produced. And, he tells his whole story. And then he makes some bold statements saying the Empower Plus is more effective than any medication or combination of medications that I've ever used before. Now, this is a renowned psychopharmacologist and psychiatrist who has also co-authored a lot of textbooks that psychiatric students will learn from in the US. Also ran a medical journal, in relation to psychiatry. He was also the one responsible for bringing lithium into North America as a treatment for child and adolescent bipolar. So this is, a big name in psychiatry. And here he's taking the stand and saying, look, like the Empower Plus, I've never seen those results before, right? So it's proven that our products were doing what we claimed they were doing. And then Charles Popper further states, because he has a private practice as well, outside of his workings with Harvard Medical School. And so he's got a private practice. And when he had questions on how to reduce his clientele off of medication, he was phoning our support center and working with our support team, because he had never been taught how to take clientele off of medications. He'd never been educated on that. And here he's, in many instances, he is the educator. And so we're educating the educator here now. And so he referred to us as the experts in the field. So not only were our products effective and did what we claimed they were doing, but also our programs that Health Canada took major issue with, because at this point in time, we'd probably removed about 10,000 people off of their psychiatric medications across the world. And Health Canada took major issue with that and wanted that portion to be shut down as well. And so here he's saying, look, they're the experts in the field. Basically, I go to them if I need expert information provided to me on how to, work with my clientele. And so we end up winning. We end up winning the court case and exposing the fact that Health Canada had literally killed Canadians. Now, here's the sad thing. Health Canada, nobody within it is ever held responsible for the deaths that they created at that point in time. But on the flip side, we just set up a legal precedent that served to protect the whole natural health community from these egregious actions that Health Canada was performing, because they were just moving in unprecedented, just trying to wipe out therapeutic companies, right? And they succeeded in numerous instances. And so, which is really quite sad, because we would have better products available to us today. We'd have more products available to us today if Health Canada wasn't getting in the way. Our health as Canadians would be much better. We wouldn't be struggling with all sorts of this chronic disease that's plaguing us. It's been growing significantly since the 70s, right?
Yeah, there's a very strong argument, the fact that if Health Canada didn't exist, that we'd actually be a lot healthier. And just imagine the amount of money that's pumped through that organization that could be allocated for, I don't know, promoting good quality sleep, promoting movement, promoting supplements, promoting vegetables. It's quite remarkable. It's a very interesting argument that's to be had. And just going back to the court proceedings, the fact that we've got individuals like Dr. Bonnie Kaplan, Dr. Charles Popper, Ron Lejeunesse, the validation for the quality of the product, the quality of the company itself, and the fact that Dr. Charles Popper was consulting with Truehope in regards to how to support his patients from getting off medications. And it's an amazing thought you have to think about when it comes to the education of doctors, where they are taught about the human body. They're taught about pathology, And then they talk about pharmacology, about which medications people should get on depending on the diagnostic criteria. But do they have courses about how to support people getting off those medications? Is there an outro to that process, or is it about keeping these individuals on these medications? And when we're talking about a disorder like bipolar, where a lot of people are on 3, 4, 5 different medications or cocktail, and there's no research on the combination of these medications being used together. It's very much kind of guesswork. When one thing stops working, let's try another thing, and side effects compound. It's quite remarkable that the conversation isn't had more often. That are we actually educating doctors to get people off medications, or are they ending up just being salesmen for big pharma?
Well, this is marketing 101. It's about establishing and ensuring a long customer lifetime value is how it's stated in marketing. Customer lifetime value. They're able to calculate it quite well, especially given the fact that they're training these doctors to say, once you're on these medications, you're on them for the rest of your life. That disease doesn't go away. Boom, you've got them from the time that you got them onto the medication to the time that they die. Right there. You can do a pretty good calculation based on general mortality rates, the average age of mortality. You can take a look and say, look, this person is worth this much to us over the next 52 years, right? Yeah. On average. It's marketing 101 is exactly what it is. And they're not going to create an outro to that because they don't want to diminish or shorten that customer lifetime value. So it's all about, once again, follow the money. Look at the money, follow the money.
And then in that case, it's worth Health Canada's time. It's worth Health Canada's money, or Canadian taxpayers' money, to take out natural health companies to create more customers. Because if people don't have the option of using therapeutic products from a natural health food store, then when things come up for them, their only option is going to be pharmaceutical companies. So, we're seeing it right now in 2024, and it's been happening for decades, the attempt to actually just eradicate the natural health industry within Canada. We're seeing it all over the world, actually. And it's just going to put more money in the pockets of big pharma. And, if Health Canada's clients, their customers, are making more money, that can only be good news for everybody, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. So we win the court case. It ends up on the news. I think we've got the news clip here, don't we?
We certainly do. Let's bring that one into play here.
CTV News with Reg Hampton.
It's not very often a judge tells someone that they had no choice but to break the law. But that's what happened today in a case involving Truehope Nutritional Support. The Alberta company makes a supplement to help people with mental disorders. It was selling its product without a drug identification number. But as Namjba Jakwan reports, the judge found them not guilty by reason of necessity.
There was relief and a feeling of vindication as company founders and supporters left the courthouse.
It shouldn't be that hard to do something good in this country, and we finally feel a little bit vindicated today over that.
In this case, regulatory enforcement cost people their lives. In this case, it caused much human suffering to those 3,000 families that required this for their lives.
Truehope Nutritional Support was charged with selling pills it created to treat bipolar disorder and depression without a drug identification number, or DIN. In his decision, the judge called the case complex and unique. He said while the company was in breach of DIN regulations, it had no reasonable alternative but to disobey Health Canada's order to stop selling the product. Judge Gerald Mayer said the harm avoided was clearly and unquestionably greater than the harm inflicted. The judge said the defendants could have faced criminal prosecution if they hadn't continued to provide the supplement, and claiming they needed a drug identification number would not have been a defense.
It showed that we couldn't stop this, because if we would have stopped, our children would be institutionalized or suicided. Instead, they're living normal lives.
It's just been such a gift to be able to go from a place where there is no hope to being able to function normally.
In 2004, the company did receive special permission from the health minister to distribute the supplement, and regulations have changed, so Truehope now has a natural health product number from Health Canada. But the owners now want an inquiry into this whole incident. Najma Yaksan, CTV News, Calgary.
Health Canada is waiting for legal advice before deciding on an appeal.
Some amazing characters in that couple of minutes there. We saw Sean Buckley, we saw David Hardy, we saw your father, we saw Barbara in there, like some amazing characters involved in the story, and Autumn there as well. And yeah, that's you just muted there, David, but yeah, that's a copy of Autumn's quite incredible book, A Promise of Hope, which is an amazing read. We've had Autumn on the show talking about that book, talking about her story. I'll leave a link in the show notes if you want to catch up with that one. But that is a really, really interesting take on Autumn's history and the situation and the history of her mother as well. Your mother there, David. So certainly a really interesting read. But yeah, what a great clip. And and the first thing the news reporter said there, what an interesting situation where you are forced to break the law and you win the lawsuit through it.
Yep, because in essence we did. We were in contravention of Section 3132 of the Food and Drugs Act, because we were helping people with bipolar disorder, regardless of what the modality was, regardless of the fact that it was a vitamin mineral supplement. We were now in contravention based on the application of that, which is, it just shows that Section 3132 of the Food and Drugs Act, that there's some issues there that need to be removed, right? And so we did break the law, but we took a higher moral ground because we were saving people's lives, right? Like it's life over law here. And so that was the principle that was established in this court proceeding, that if we were to have obeyed Health Canada, we would have cost people their lives, and we could have been in court now for criminal negligence resulting in death, which is much more egregious than in contravention of Section 3.1 or 3.2 of the Food and Drugs Act, right? Oh, we offended the act rather than, on the converse is harming people and causing their death. Really? So Health Canada, once again, doesn't have their priorities straight. It's all about policy. You're breaking our policies, but you're saving people's lives. But we don't care that you're saving people's lives. We're going to cost those people their lives because we want to enforce our policy. Yeah. It's ridiculous.
Unreal.
So the ruling comes out. There is this beautiful sense of vindication. Lawsuit continues on. We're now suing Health Canada at this point in time. Health Canada did appeal. An investigation never did take place into their actions, but they did appeal, and then they dropped the appeal really shortly thereafter. So they're once again just playing those games, just abusing the system really and keeping us strung out. And so what's great about this, though, is that studies start to happen again, because all the research at this point in time in Canada had come to a halt. It was just kind of shut down. And there were studies taking place out of the US, there were studies taking place out of Hawaii. It was starting to grow, right? As researchers were finding out about this and finding out about the tremendous results, they began studying it. So it was growing on its own within the research community, within the scientific community. And so that was a beautiful thing. But, there's this issue that starts to arise coming up into, around 2008. Health Canada at this point in time was started to slow down on some of their raids, but there's still stuff taking place. There's stuff that had taken place that was egregious beforehand. I think, it's only a couple-minute clip. We should probably, I know we're coming up close to the end of our time, but are we wanting to watch that quick clip there called The Question of Sovereignty?
Absolutely. I think it's incredibly relevant. So we're just going to play that one here.
It's a very vivid picture in my mind.
There was this bang, bang, bang on the door.
It was 5 Canadian RCMP officers.
Another officer jumped out.
Am I under arrest?
He had his gun and it was aimed straight at my head.
Broke down the door of his house, came in, and he awoke with a gun to his head.
The lead person holds a gun towards my wife.
I gotta call the police. How can I call the police? This is the police. It was terrifying.
It was invasive, it was wrong, and people got hurt.
These stories had never been told, right?
They rushed through the office and gathered everybody up and treated us like common criminals.
Protesting Bill C-51.
More than 200 people gathered in Old Strathcona today protesting a new federal bill they say would severely limit their access to natural remedies.
We're talking about vitamins and minerals, things that you pick up off the shelf every day.
You pointed a gun at my wife for these things?
Now with this Bill C6, the consumers are afraid, and the doctors are afraid of Health Canada. You know, they can do the seizures, they can put you in jail.
This is what Health Canada does all the time, you see. Guns drawn.
It's not conspiracy theory. This is economics 101.
I happen to believe that you've sold us out. We built a country, east and west and north. We built it on an infrastructure that deliberately resisted the continental pressure of the United States.
The day that regulators become corporate pawns, then we're in trouble.
For 120 years we've done it. With one signature of a pen. You've reversed that.
We're literally moving into 1984, and I think we need to ask, is this how we want to live?
Well, it's a disappointment. I mean, I proudly wear the maple leaf, you know?
You know, that just goes to show, it really illustrates, you know, the environment of the natural health community and the oppression that it was under and is still under today. In fact, it's even worse today, but that's, you know, we're going to save that for episode 8. You know, it's just really interesting to see a lot of these untold stories, and that's just scratching the surface. Like, there is so many people that, you know, stateside, Canada side, gone to jail wrongfully over these types of situations, had their businesses destroyed, lives lost. Like, it's just phenomenal what Health Canada has been doing all along. I know, you know, this whole episode really is, you know, beating on Health Canada, but during this particular part of the story, for 8 years after the excitement comes out about our product being studied and showing exactly what thousands of people have already come to experience at that point in time. So now they're feeling validated, right? Like, oh, wow, like, yeah, that's exactly what I found in my life, right? By using these vitamins and minerals. To all of a sudden, Health Canada is just doing its darndest for years on end to try to shut this thing down. Unfortunately, my father wasn't in it for business, wasn't in it for money. Otherwise, he would have walked away, minimized the risk, and said, hey, there's other lucrative businesses I can get involved in. Smart guy. Or maybe I'll take the advice of Health Canada and move down south, right? And leave all the Canadians out to dry. No. Fortunately, this was a mission on his heart to bless other families so that they didn't have to go through what our family had to go through in relation to the multiple suicides, in relation to just being decimated by the effects of severe mental health conditions.
Yeah, if your father's such a hero in this whole story, and I'm just thinking about Autumn's book as well, when you read through that, like, your dad's an absolute champion. And I feel like if True Hope and Empower Plus and all these other amazing products were just, you know, general business ideas, then perhaps things would have gone very, very differently. But the fact that this product and this company was born out of, you know, significant tragedy, and your father just couldn't allow that to happen to another family, to experience the death, the tragedy, the suicide, and everything else that encompasses that. It's those deep-rooted, beautiful reasons that your father has continued to stand up against tyranny, against Health Canada and their agents and their incredibly disgusting actions. And yes, it's really, you know, a strong tribute to him and his character. And I'm personally just blessed to be able to just be a part of True Hope Canada and to be able to still be here, to be able to serve and look back at the battles that he's won for us.
Yeah, there's definitely a rich history to it, and it was a beautiful thing growing up with that as an example, right? To be a warrior, which would then have to be employed, you know, in years following, which will, I don't know what episode that starts to come out, probably 5 or 6. Anyways, but yeah, it was a beautiful thing to observe and to be a part of, and to have firsthand experience being involved with my father in these battles. So at this point in time, we're still suing Health Canada. Now, there's a topic that emerged during that video, and we see the protests about Bill C-51. 2008 rolls around. We're in the federal courts suing Health Canada of an extremely corrupt case. Like, we are being absolutely railroaded on this case. But it's at the same time that Bill C-51 emerges, which has the ability to destroy the whole natural health community in one fell swoop. Anything that's deemed therapeutic, reclassifying it basically under a drug model, holding the natural health community to the same level of repercussions as is found, the millions of dollar fines and all that type of stuff, as what you'd find in the pharmaceutical arena, except that the natural health community doesn't make the billions of dollars that the pharmaceutical industry does. So they can't afford $1 million fines, whereas it's built into the business models of the pharmaceutical industry. They find themselves out of line. They make, $100 million off of a medication. They get fined. They get fined, $6 million for that. Oh, slap on the wrist. Where, they still have the rest of the profit, and they killed some people in the process, right? They should be criminally charged for this. And so they can afford to build that into their business model. If we got fined $6 million, goodbye, right? Goodbye to Truehope. We're not going to sustain that unless the people got behind it and funded us or whatever. It's just not sustainable. And so we see this emerging and this bill coming forward. And so things start to get heated. And so massive protest takes place in front of the federal court building while my father and Sean Buckley are upstairs with David Hardy, and they are fighting out this court battle. Down below on the street level, it's this massive protest taking place about Bill C-51, which is actually, that's the actual footage that's found in that last news clip that we have there.
You want me to get that one rolling?
Yeah, let's get it rolling.
All right.
Off store shelves. Some of them off store shelves. These protesters say it's taking away their rights as citizens to choose and forces them to use pharmaceuticals.
And I've been doing herbs all my life. I don't do drugs. I don't do pharmaceuticals. I don't believe in them, and my rights are being taken away.
Bill C-51 is designed to ensure supplements are safe before they are put on the market. But the Hoffman Center, which prescribes both drugs and herbal medications, says supplements are safe and in some cases safer than pharmaceuticals.
Okay.
Just go pause it there because, wow.
I know we're running short on time, but to digress for one moment here, there's sometimes safer than pharmaceuticals. That's amazing to me. There isn't a single listed death in the history of Canada from a natural health supplement, and yet we literally, since 2000, we have over 200,000 deaths from people taking their pharmaceuticals as properly prescribed. Over 200,000 deaths. That's like a good sized city here in Alberta, right? Gone over the last 24 years from people taking the medications as they were supposed to, as they were instructed to. So no, that's one of those media distortions that just misleads people, because the only safe pharmaceutical that's out there is the one that's not taken. They all come with inherent side effects that are harmful and many times deadly.
Well said. I'll continue this video here.
No identifiable deaths from herbs or vitamins or minerals that we know of from this natural healthcare industry. So we're talking about two different entities entirely.
Organizers of this rally say if the bill were to pass, up to 70% of all supplements would be illegal, and that could lead to a host of other problems.
But if it goes to the extent that what I'm hearing about, that you can get non-elected officials and government agents coming in and raiding your place of business because it's not meeting specific criteria, I think we're entering into very dangerous territory.
Lucas Boyd hopes the bill fades because he doesn't want to revert back to prescribed drugs.
They just had really bad side effects. Some of them made me feel sick, and they gave me really bad anxiety.
Boyd and those around him will continue their fight. The thought of losing is enough to make these protesters sick to their stomachs. For Your City, I'm Bindu Suri.
Yeah, interesting, hey?
So the whole of it, with this is where it gets interesting. And I know we can't go too deep into this because we're now almost crossing over into episode 3. But there's this major issue looming over Canada. Literally, in the balances is the whole natural health community. and basically going to a model like Australia at that time or New Zealand, where their natural health community is lousy. Like they didn't have a whole lot of products accessible to them, empty store shelves, and that's what Canadians stand at risk at that very point. And so this is one of the most troubling times in history in Canada for having access to natural health products is 2008. And we discovered this, and we're working with Sean Buckley on this. Sean Buckley is looking at it as a lawyer, looking at the bill that's put before Parliament, and we're saying, whoa, this can't go through. So we brand that whole Stop C51, all the stop signs, the Stop C51. We brand it, and we launched this. We were the leaders in this movement. And then what we got to see was interesting. We got to see how there was infiltrators within the natural health community that were trying to sideline the whole of this. Infiltrators that were posing as the protectors of the natural health community. And in reality, they were doing the evil bidding of Health Canada and deceiving many of the key stakeholders within the natural health community to basically accept this bill. And we got to see these organizations for who they truly were, their true colors. And we got to go head to head with CHFA, Canadian Health Food Association, which was supposed to be the trade organization that was there to liaison between the natural health community and Health Canada, and to protect the natural health community from these issues that we were struggling with from Health Canada. And yet they were doing the exact opposite. And so I think we're going to be touching more on that at the beginning of episode 3 as to who these infiltrators were, what role they were playing, and what we were able to expose as an organization that caused the resignation of certain key players within all of this.
Perfect segue into part 3, David, which will be coming to you guys next week. That is it for this part 2, the heavy hand of Health Canada, this 8-part series, the Truehope Family Files. Wow, quite an interesting episode. Yeah, we just went through an hour there, and I think we covered it beautifully. And by the time people get to the end of episode 8, we're really going to have taken them on a journey. I think they're really going to understand the very insidious nature of Health Canada and the quite courageous actions that is Truehope Canada, and a lot of the other characters that we'll see that who are mildly associated with the company, but are their own identity as well. So yeah, David, thank you so much for taking us through that in episode 2. We're going to be back with part 3. If you've got the ability to give us a review on iTunes or on Spotify, please do that. We certainly recommend, if you've not checked out part 1 or you feel like you want to recommend that to somebody, do share the link. There's going to be some links in the show notes for some of the things we've referenced today, Autumn's book, for example. So make sure you do check that out, because it really does bring this whole beautiful story together. That is it really from me. David, do you have any closing remarks?
Nope. Plenty of remarks to be made in episode 3, though. Looking forward to it.
Well said. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for watching and listening. We will see you soon.
Blessings.